Good afternoon and welcome. It's my privilege to call this hearing to order. Today we will consider the nominations of Mr. Luke Lindberg to be the Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Agriculture Affairs and Mr. Devon Westhill to be Assistant Secretary of the United States Department of Agriculture for Civil Rights. We welcome both of you to the committee and congratulate you on your nominations. Thank you so much for your willingness to serve. The challenges that farmers continue to face, which have been consistently communicated to this committee in the Farm Bill hearings we've held so far this Congress, show why it's so important that Secretary Rollins have her team in place. The costs for fuel, seed, and fertilizer remain high, as do interest rates, and farmers everywhere are losing money on every acre they cultivate, all the while in desperate need of an updated Farm Bill safety net and risk management tools. Secretary Rollins has done a great job supporting our farmers through these challenges, and the two nominees before us today will be important members of her team. Starting with Mr. Lindberg, the Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Agriculture Affairs is tasked with expanding access for U.S. agricultural products into foreign markets and promoting U.S. food and agricultural exports. Considering that the U.S. agriculture trade deficit is projected to reach a record $49 billion this year, and both tariff and non-tariff trade barriers continue to inhibit U.S. agriculture from reaching key markets and opening new markets. This position is truly critical. Mr. Lindberg will be tasked with representing USDA in trade negotiations, including collaborating with USTR, the Department of Commerce, Department of State, and the White House. Farmers and ranchers rely on this position to elevate the significance of agricultural trade issues in broader trade discussions, and will be especially true given the current uncertain trade environment. The Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Agriculture Affairs also plays an important role in administering USDA's international food assistance programs. Mr. Lindberg will be responsible for coordinating commodity procurement among various agencies within the USDA. This work helps expand markets for U.S. producers, and Mr. Lindberg will be responsible for working with the White House to ensure the good work of the longstanding programs, such as Food for Peace, can continue. I'm confident that Mr. Lindberg's prior government service, prior private sector expertise, and his deep trade background will serve him well in this role. While Mr. Lindberg will have important work to lead, so too will Mr. Westhill. As I've said before, I believe producers want an improved relationship with USDA. They want to know that USDA is a partner and will provide them the tools they need. Mr. Westhill will be in charge of enforcing civil rights law within the USDA, as well as processing unemployment opportunity complaints. While this role isn't often in the spotlight, it truly is essential. Mr. Westhill will be tasked with ensuring all USDA employees are treated with respect, that their civil rights are protected, and they are not fearful of retaliation. He will also work with the 29 agencies and 8 missionaries within the USDA to ensure that the programs meant to serve our farmers, ranchers, and rural communities are carried out in a way that is consistent with civil rights law and department protocol, and address complaints in a timely and a thoughtful manner. Having previously served as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, he knows the office inside and out and will be able to hit the ground running, and I'm confident he's the right man for the job. I'm confident both Mr. Lindberg and Westhill have the necessary expertise and experience and will thrive in these roles. I look forward to hearing their testimonies and answer to our questions. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Happy to be the warm-up act for Senator Rounds. I want to thank you for holding these important, holding the hearing for these important nominations for these USDA positions. I want to thank Mr. Lindberg and Mr. Westhill for being with us today. Pleased to see your families are here today, including Mr. Lindberg's wife, Brittany and his children, John, Mark, and Lucy. And I see that Lucy already is matching the political smarts of her family by dressing to match her grandma, as well as Mr. Westhill's wife, Michelle, his children, Madeline and Benjamin. I have to say, Madeline, you may be the most stylish-looking child that's ever come before this committee. Thank you. Mr. Lindberg, you have been nominated to serve as the Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Ag Affairs, which, as we know, oversees USDA trade policy. Based on our meeting, I believe you are well qualified for this role, given the work you've done in state, and have a real understanding of the importance of trade for American farmers. You are coming to this position at a critical time. If confirmed, you will need to be a strong advocate for farmers and ranchers and for expanding markets in the face of what I consider, not speaking for everyone up here, but chaotic trade policy. Farming is the riskiest business there is. As we meet today, farmers in my state and across the country are eager to get into the fields to plant this year's crop. I saw this firsthand when I met with the Johnsons in Faribault County recently. They have to make business decisions right now to try to provide certainty. Can they break even? They've got input costs, they've got weather events, they've got an international market that is now completely uncertain because of these tariffs. They need markets to sell their product. 20% of what American farmers and ranchers produce goes outside of our country. There are so many customers now and potential customers. We have had 3 out of the last 4 years were record years for ag exports. My state is 4th in the nation for ag exports, so I know a little bit about this. But this reckless tariff policy right now is putting farmers' livelihoods in jeopardy. And we continue, I know we all do, to hear about the negative impacts. What really bothers me about this is some of the big guys, the big companies, Tim Cook can get into the White House, great, save the phones, but the soybean farmer in a little county in Minnesota doesn't have that phone number. Can't get into that meeting at Wall Street with the Treasury Secretary. So I'm just afraid that the smaller farmers and ranchers are going to be roadkill if this isn't resolved as soon as possible. The top 3 countries targeted for tariffs, Mexico, Canada, and China, are also our top 3 ag export markets and account for half of all U.S. ag exports. We're already seeing retaliation, and our farmers have said they want aid, not trade. And I do appreciate, again, you, Mr. Lindberg, and our discussions about the need to make sure that we have export markets because there's so many opportunities out there, and we need to get this settled as soon as possible. We're also considering your nomination, Mr. Westhill. This is a critically important position where you'll be tasked with ensuring that every farmer and every USDA employee is treated with the respect and fairness that they deserve. Historically, the USDA has not always done so, both for the farmers it serves and the federal workers dedicating their careers to public service. Despite progress made in recent years, we know there's more work to be done, and this is particularly important as we see some of the actions from this administration. I appreciated our conversation very much, and as you know, I expressed concerns, some of which you'll hear today, about some of the ongoing issues with civil rights, but I do look forward to hearing from you today. Welcome you and your family to this committee room. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Today, we are joined by our colleague from South Dakota, Senator Rounds, who will introduce our nominee, Mr. Luke Lindberg. Thank you for being here, Senator Rounds. It's always great to have you around the committee. You're certainly a tireless advocate for the farm community and for rural America. So with that, go ahead and proceed.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, thank you. Chairman Boozman, Ranking Member Klobuchar, and distinguished members of the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry. It is my honor to introduce Mr. Luke Lindberg as the nominee for Undersecretary of Agriculture for Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs. Luke is eminently qualified for this role after dedicating his career to expanding markets for producers. He is joined by his wife, Brittany, and several other family members. South Dakota Governor Larry Roden is also in attendance to support his nomination. Luke originally hails from Vermont. He later earned a Master of Business Administration, a Master of Public Policy, and a Bachelor of Arts in Government and Politics from the University of Maryland. After meeting his wife Brittany while working in Washington, D.C., Luke made the wise decision to make South Dakota his home. As a proud South Dakotan, Luke enjoys participating in all of the activities that make our state great, including hunting and outdoor recreation. And I can attest to the fact that he is enjoying shooting an occasional rooster in the fields as well. Luke previously served as the Chief of Staff and Chief Strategy Officer at the Export-Import Bank of the United States. As a top EXIM official, he was responsible for overseeing daily agency functions and executing key initiatives. This includes efforts to expand new markets for American liquefied natural gas, or LNG, and securing America's supply of critical minerals and rare earths. In recognition of his leadership at EXIM, Luke earned the Distinguished Service Award. Shortly after settling into his home, Luke realized South Dakota was one of the few states without a trade association. He quickly moved to establish South Dakota Trade. This organization works to expand markets through trade missions and export education. As president and CEO of South Dakota Trade, Luke conducted 5 trade missions in a 2-year period. During this time, he traveled to several nations to promote South Dakota agricultural products. These trips helped foster important relationships between our producers and foreign buyers. As American producers contend with trade deficits, it is clear we need leaders who understand complex agricultural markets. Throughout his career, Luke has consistently stood up for farmers and ranchers. He was a strong pick by President Trump and will do an outstanding job as Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs. I urge you to support this very highly qualified nominee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member.
I also see right peeking behind you there, Senator Rounds, is the governor of South Dakota, is that correct?
Governor Larry Roden, yes.
Very good.
Very,
So
very pleased to have him here.
We welcome him as well. Thank you for being here. I know my Midwest governors.
We're on a roll, Senator Klobuchar. You know, last committee hearing, we had Baby Dog. Now we've got the governor of South Dakota. It's great. Devon West, thank you, Mike, so much. Devon Westhill is nominated to be Assistant Secretary of Agriculture for Civil Rights. He is currently President and General Counsel for the Center for Equal Opportunity and led the Civil Rights Office at the Department of Agriculture during the first Trump administration. He worked at the Department of Labor as Deputy Secretary of the Office of Public Liaison. Mr. Westhill is a Navy veteran and a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and the University of Florida. With that, let's go ahead and take the oath. Thank you all again for being here. Thank you for your willingness to serve. And if you'll come forward and we'll administer the oath. And then we'll have the testimonies. Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the statement you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Do you agree that if confirmed, you will respond to a request to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of the Senate? Good. Thank you. You can be seated. And Mr. Lindberg, you're up.
Chairman Boozman, Ranking Member Klobuchar, and distinguished members of this committee, I'm humbled to come before you today as President Donald J. Trump's nominee for Undersecretary of Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I would also like to thank Secretary Rollins and the great team at USDA, including hopefully my future colleague, Mr. Devon Westhill, my wife and children, John and Lucy, who are here as well with me today. My wife, Brittany, has served this great country as a supportive family member for most of her life, and her willingness to embark upon this next phase of civic engagement alongside me is inspiring and really epitomizes the godly woman she's become. So thank you, Brittany, for being here. Should you confirm me for this position, this will not be the first time I've served as an American diplomat. In President Trump's first administration, I served as Chief of Staff at the Export-Import Bank of the United States, where I led key initiatives on the great power competition with China, liquefied natural gas exports, and securing America's supply of critical minerals and rare earths. I also led EXIM's involvement in the execution of the historic and groundbreaking Abraham Accords, a series of bilateral agreements normalizing relations between countries in the Middle East. Over the past several years, I've served as president and CEO of South Dakota Trade, the top diplomatic posting in my home state, which is second in the nation in per capita agricultural exports. In this position, I led trade missions to Mexico, Japan, Taiwan, and Israel, generating millions in sales for South Dakota farmers and ranchers. And in so doing, I held bilateral meetings with President Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, Vice President Hsao Bakim of Taiwan, and Mexico's then Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Victor Villalobos. Throughout my career, I've conducted business on 6 continents and led teams of hundreds of staff overseas. My journey, which has taken me across the world and back again, several times over, started like many of you in a small town far from Washington, D.C. I have a very distinct memory of standing in front of our brick town hall in Norwich, Vermont, which I believe Senator Welch has been to, waving a campaign sign for my mother, who was running for town treasurer and who is here with us today. That was a special day for me. First, because Mom won her election, and second, in that it was the day I realized that democratic, freedom-loving nations are only sustainable if people are willing to serve. My college pastor, Matt Nichols, who is also here with us today, and who prayed over my family before this hearing, helped me to identify a life verse that aligned with this calling to public service. Proverbs 31, verse 8 says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the right of all who are destitute." I can think of no greater calling than to speak up on behalf of rural Americans at this moment in time. Many of my friends and neighbors, many of whom are here today, have asked me what I hope to accomplish should I be confirmed to this role. My answer is quite simple. President Trump said it best when he nominated me. Luke will make sure American farmers and ranchers get the smart trade deals they deserve. America's agricultural trade deficit, which is the worst in American history, is driven by a number of factors, but principally by the lack of an America First trade agenda that prioritizes market access for our farmers and ranchers. For too long, we've let other countries access our market and not negotiated reciprocal access to theirs. Recently, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative solicited public comment on unfair trade practices forced upon our great American producers by other nations. I took the time to read every single submission that comments on agriculture. In so doing, I was reminded that 75% of the seafood, over half the fruit, and 35% of the vegetables we consume in America are imported. Our ethanol producers are no longer competitive in Brazil because of Brazilian import tariffs. Our hog farmers cannot export pork to Brazil, India, Nigeria, Jamaica, Namibia, or Thailand. Mexico has enjoyed a 557% increase in specialty crop imports into the United States in just the last decade. Canada has rigged the USMCA agreement terms against our dairy and wheat farmers. The European Union is responsible for roughly half of our overall trade deficit, $23.6 billion, and yet it routinely shuts out our products at the altar of non-scientific-based claims. There's really too much to say about China in this opening set of remarks, but a stark comment that stuck out to me came from representatives of American corn farmers who said that U.S. corn growers cannot rely on China as an export market. However, in the midst of all this feedback, one story that lives in my memory is that of a family from Georgia who captained a shrimp boat. The husband and wife commented that they've noticed a 70% reduction in shrimp trawlers due to a flood of imports from foreign nations that process their shrimp in unsanitary conditions we would never allow in the U.S. The Honorable Henry Kissinger once said, "America has no permanent enemies or friends, only interests." America's agricultural trade deficit is not impacting just one region, one political constituency, or one segment of our ag economy. We are all impacted, and we all must fix it together. In addition to helping farmers and ranchers navigate short-term changes aimed at more fair trade deals, I stand ready to explore new export markets and also hold our existing export markets accountable to the deals they made with our family farms. America has not lost our competitive edge in producing food, fuel, and fiber. We've merely abdicated our leadership role in feeding the world by allowing others to rig the system against us. I humbly ask for your support for my nomination and for your ongoing partnership should you confirm me for this role. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lindberg. Mr. Westhill, you're recognized.
Chairman Boozman, Ranking Member Klobuchar, distinguished members of the committee. It is the honor of my life to get the opportunity to testify before you here today, and I want to thank President Trump for that. This is the second time he's entrusted me with the honor and the duty to head the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at USDA. Call it Oscar. If I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed, I would cherish the opportunity to work alongside Secretary Rollins and the numerous wonderful people with whom I served in President Trump's first term, including career officials, and many tremendous new colleagues like Luke here. But that would not be possible without the support of my little family, who have stuck beside me all these years, and who are here with me today. Allow me to introduce them, please. First is sweet baby girl, Madeline Sophia, who turns out is one of the most fashionable, if not the most fashionable, ever to appear before this committee. I've said since her day one, she is super smart, super funny, and very advanced for her age, and I've been proven right on that many times in her 8 years. Next is my son, Benjamin. He's our scholar athlete, number 7, Big Ben, quarterback and linebacker on the Jacks Beach Sharks, and the most amazing person in the whole wide world. That's objectively speaking, is my wife here with me, the beautiful, wonderful, lovely Michelle Westhill. Thank you all for being here. It is such an honor for me to be here because I've spent my entire career dedicated to the public interest via nonprofit leadership and government service. This is the 4th time I volunteered to serve my country. The first was as a teenager in the United States Navy. The second was at the United States Department of Labor. And the third was within the very office to which I am nominated to lead again. My principal aim in all these endeavors was to be a small part of our shared project to form a more perfect union. Specific to the role for which I'm interviewing today, that means ensuring civil rights protection, equal opportunity, and equal justice under the law for everyone. That mission is very personal to me. I was born a poor black child and raised in the South along with my 2 siblings by our single mother. It was hard scrabble. But being born into tough circumstances is not at all unusual, of course. In fact, it is, for the vast majority of mankind, what we've experienced. But for my siblings and me, we had 2 things that made all the difference in our lives compared to untold numbers of others. We had an extraordinary mother who loved us, wanted the best for us, and who set an outstanding example for us. And we were Americans. Like my heroes, Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington, who went before me, have observed. I've learned that in America, the mere connection with race, color, or ethnicity, or one's starting point in life, will not permanently carry an individual forward unless he has individual worth, nor finally hold an individual back if he possesses intrinsic individual merit. So long as we don't allow our grievances to overshadow our opportunities, the sky is the limit in this country. I'm living proof of that. That is the true history of America. That is the crux of the American dream. We must keep it that way. I've been a voice for this perspective for a long time, and I hope to continue to be. If I'm confirmed, I want to pick up where I left off in focusing Oscar on its core duties, communicating from the top to the bottom that civil rights will be vigorously enforced at USDA, being laser-focused on improving our core complaint processing work, and ensuring the development and deployment of effective, proactive prevention measures. We're very successful in the first term in this regard. For example, we improved the timeliness of EEO complaint investigations from 61% to 100% within 3 months of my arrival. We grew a model EEO program pursuant to EEOC requirements from 61% to 85% within 6 months of my arrival. And prior to my departure, we developed and implemented new department-wide civil rights, anti-harassment, and reasonable accommodation policies. Should the Senate confirm me as Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at USDA, you may be surprised to learn it will only be the first time since the Obama administration that a Senate-confirmed leader will have headed that office. That, of course, is no way to maintain a statutorily mandated federal government office, nor is it fair to the 100,000 employees and millions of customers who want to do business with the USDA on equal footing. I mention this merely to point out the gravity of the moment for civil rights at USDA. If that long span of vacancy and Senate-confirmed leadership is broken by my confirmation, I commit to carry out the responsibilities of the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at USDA with the utmost integrity. Once again, I am beyond honored to get the opportunity to testify before you today. I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you both for your testimony. We'll begin now our round of questions. Each member will have 5 minutes. Before I ask my questions, I'd like to add letters of support from various farm groups for Mr. Lindberg and Mr. Westhill's nomination into record. Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Lindberg, this year the U.S. agricultural trade deficit, as you mentioned, is projected to reach a record $49 billion. If confirmed, how will you work to ensure that the broader tariff negotiations being driven by USTR prioritize greater market access for U.S. agriculture exports?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the time we spent together discussing these various issues. If you ask many of my colleagues at South Dakota Trade or other people I've worked with in the past, you'll often hear them say that I believe exporting is a team sport, and we must work together to accomplish the exact task that you're discussing today. For me, getting back to surplus would be my number one priority in this capacity. I believe that on day one, I would walk into my office, draw the number negative $49 billion on the whiteboard, and begin to invite farm groups in from all across the farm economy to figure out where are the countries, where are the markets, what are the products, and what are those dollar values that get us back to surplus. And then I want to be an advocate in the interagency process to make sure that the folks at USTR, the folks at Commerce, the folks at Treasury all know and understand what those priority markets are, what those priority products are for our ag community members, and then we go out and start to win the day, go on the offense.
So really in follow-up to that, if confirmed, you will oversee the premier trade programs, the market access program and foreign market development program, which again are so vital to our producers. Can you describe your experience with MAP and FMD and how you view their role in helping build, expand, and maintain markets for the U.S.?
Happy to do so. Yes, sir. So in my role as president and CEO of South Dakota Trade, we have, as mentioned previously, led a number of trade missions overseas in partnership with a group, the Food Export Midwest program, which uses those funding programs, MAP and FMD, to support our agricultural producers overseas. We, on every one of those trade missions, also engaged the Foreign Agricultural Service staff in country to set up meetings for us, to help guide our agendas, to get Governor Roden and other folks in the room with the right counterparts for bilateral discussions to help advance our ag community's needs in those specific markets. And so I would look forward to working with many of the staff and those programs that I've worked with in the past to execute on their mission.
Very good. Mr. Westhill, based on your insights gleaned from previous experience in this role at USDA, what recommendations do you have to ensure that all USDA employees are treated with respect, that their civil rights are protected, and if violations occur, that individuals are not fearful of retaliation?
Senator, thank you for the question. And first of all, I'll refer back to my opening statement. What we have to do is ensure at OSCR, at USDA, the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, that its core complaint processing work is going well. Unfortunately, when I arrived at that office in the last term, we inherited quite a backlog of EEO complaints. What I want to make sure, and we rectified that, as I mentioned, what I want to make sure is that if I encounter that sort of backlog again, that it's dispense with very quickly, once again, within 3 months or faster. We have a history of being successful with that. We'd want to do that again. And I think that is, the proof is in the pudding when it comes to that. Individuals at USDA will understand that their civil rights are going to be enforced, that the leadership is committed to that. And I think at the end of the day, what we want to do is ensure that folks understand their rights and responsibilities as well. So those proactive prevention techniques that I mentioned, training and so forth, ensure that those are in place as well.
Very good. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll start with you, Mr. Westhill, just to finish up here. At its founding, President Lincoln referred to USDA as the People's Department. As Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, if confirmed, you would be responsible for ensuring USDA and its agencies comply with all civil rights laws. If confirmed, what is your plan to ensure compliance with civil rights laws, especially with respect to farm programs, and will you work to rebuild the relationship with farmers who have been involved with civil rights issues and have long distrusted the department?
Senator, thank you for the question. I'll start with sort of the latter part of the question. I'm absolutely committed to building relationships with all customers and employees at USDA. Any who want to do business with USDA should be able to do that on equal footing, and you have my commitment there. When it comes to enforcing civil rights and ensuring folks understand their rights and responsibilities around those things, I don't think it's rocket science. It's a pretty clear playbook. One, communicate from the top to the bottom that civil rights will be vigorously enforced, that it's a priority. Secondly, ensure that folks understand their rights and responsibilities. It's important to have a robust proactive prevention technique plan. And then finally, to hold folks accountable, to really show that you're enforcing those civil rights. So when opportunities come to investigate very deeply any issues that come to light, that you're doing those things and that everyone at USDA, the employees and the customers, understand that you're taking those things seriously.
Okay, the 2018 Farm Bill requires the USDA in law to conduct civil rights impact analysis with respect to USDA employment programs, activities. If confirmed, will you commit to analyzing adverse or disproportionate impact with respect to proposed program changes or reorganizations at USDA, including conducting a civil rights impact analysis?
I think it's critical to ensure that any major programs at USDA are evaluated for civil rights issues, and I'm committed to ensuring that we do that at USDA, as I did in my in this role in the first term.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lindberg, what opportunities do you see for market expansion in other countries for American ag products?
Senator, thanks again for the question, and thank you for spending some time with me prior to this. I appreciated our conversation leading up to this hearing today. I believe there's a number of markets that American agricultural producers should be taking advantage of that are currently not at full capacity. India would be my top priority for a market that we should be doing better in. 1.4 billion consumers in India. I'm excited to hear this morning that Secretary Besant is making progress on a trade deal with India. But one of the markets that concerns me the most is the $23.6 billion trade deficit we have with the European Union. And the basket of goods that we produce and the basket of goods they produce is too eerily similar, and the trade deficit is too wide that we should have more market access for our producers in the European Union. Okay. 2 examples.
Thank you. And hopefully we can do trade agreements with other countries. I think you all know was a fan of the USMCA. There's still work that has to be done on dairy and other improvements. But to me, that's the way we should be going instead of where we are. And by the way, I was also pleased with the change in India on frozen turkey during the last administration. I understand that's still in place. But I recently led 18 of our colleagues in pressing the U.S. trade representative on the impacts that the president's tariff agenda will have on farmers seeking clarity. And I'd like to ask that the letter be entered in the record.
Without objection.
So I think you know, Mr. Lindberg, there's many, this is a Minnesota euphemism, strong personalities surrounding the president and giving advice on trade. How will you advocate for American farmers and be a voice for preserving and expanding new export markets?
Thank you, Senator. And I did read the letter you submitted to Ambassador Greer, and I look forward to working with the ambassador. When I was chief of staff at the Export-Import Bank, Ambassador Greer was chief of staff at USTR, the first Trump administration. I have similarly several colleagues in the Commerce Department, incoming, as well as in the Treasury Department, which are the three lead organizations right now on trade negotiations. I look forward to working closely with each of them to ensure that our farmers' voices are well represented in those discussions.
And I appreciated our discussion on export promotion programs, and I know you talked to the chairman about that. Will you also commit to ensuring that RAP, the Regional Agriculture Promotion Program, remains in place for export market development?
I will
Export.
absolutely commit to the fact that we need to have programs that help reduce our trade deficit, and the export promotion programs help us do that.
Thank you. How can USDA work to make domestic specialty crop growers more competitive when facing cheaper imports? And I think we all know maybe this shouldn't even be called specialty crops. It's like potatoes, tomatoes, things we eat might be a better way to describe it. Could you just answer about the cheaper imports, what's going on that front?
Sure. So our specialty crop producers absolutely should be exporting more in their own way. Secretary Rollins recently announced that the technical expertise that the Foreign Ag Service offers to our specialty crop producers and the foreign markets they sell into to provide, making sure that there are no non-tariff barriers on those export markets is something that I look forward to working on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Hyde-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to both of you for being here today with your families. It's certainly an exciting day for everyone, and I'm excited about your leadership and look forward to that. And Mr. Lindberg, Mississippi leads the nation in catfish production, yet our producers face a lot of unfair competition, unfair subsidized, low-cost, and sometimes unsafe imported catfish, particularly from Vietnam. Growers in Mississippi and across the South raise high-quality, sustainable, grown farm-raised catfish, and they follow very strict environmental, labor, and health standards. And how will you work with the U.S. Trade Representative and the USDA Food Safety and Inspection Service to ensure strict enforcement of inspection standards to prevent unsafe imports from harming consumers and domestic catfish producers?
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate this, and we discussed this in your office, and I very much look forward to working with you and your staff to ensure that our domestic catfish producers do get the market here in America that they deserve. Certainly, somebody will have to explain to me someday how the United States of America, with two oceans on each side of us and the mighty Mississippi and the Great Lakes and all of these things, and yet we're importing 75% of our seafood that we consume. I will absolutely work across my agency at USDA, should I be confirmed with this role, to ensure that exactly what you're saying, as well as with our interagency partners, to make sure our catfish producers have the ability to sell here domestically.
Thank you. And Mr. Westhill, Congress in 2023 provided $3.7 billion in relief to support producers who had experienced economic losses due to the natural disasters. Unfortunately, the Biden administration changed the emergency relief program without input from Congress and with disregard for congressional intent. As a result, some of the hardest hit producers were left behind while they also wrestled with historically high inflation input cost and also the low commodity prices. Will you commit to ensuring fair and equal access to USDA programs for all farmers, regardless of operation size and the background?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. And I think it's important for me to say that I have to ensure that I skate within my lane. My job, if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed, is to ensure that everyone who wants to do business with USDA, any of the customers in any of the areas across a very big department, are able to do that without any arbitrary barriers on any basis that's covered under civil rights laws. I commit to ensuring that individuals will be free from discrimination and participating in any USDA programs.
Thank you. And back to Mr. Lindberg. The livestock and poultry producers in Mississippi and around the country have taken huge financial hits from animal diseases like high-path avian influenza. And some countries like China use these disease outbreaks as an excuse for unjustified trade barriers that are not science-based. And we saw this in BSE in early 2000 when it took 13 years for China to buy our beef again. And it is something that I worked on as the Mississippi Commissioner of Agriculture and Commerce during that time, that was just their excuse. You had an outbreak. But what steps will you take to ensure that international trade restrictions imposed on U.S. products are science-based and lifted promptly when conditions warrant?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I 100% believe that tariff barriers are one aspect of trade policy that countries use to against our farmers and ranchers. There are a lot of non-tariff barriers, and one of the ones you're discussing today is vitally important to them to have that market access and be able to get beyond that. As the Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs, I will lead the Codex Office, which is our effort to work with the agencies around the world or different countries around the world to make sure we have a set of agricultural standards that meet the needs of our farmers and ranchers. That would be one avenue that I would work through to make sure that exactly the case you're listing here today was fixed, and through that avenue, make sure that we set the appropriate standards that benefit our farmers and ranchers. I'm also a fierce advocate. I want to show up in those countries and knock the door down and say to them, it's time to open up and it's time to move forward. And this is no longer acceptable under President Trump and the America First trade agenda. And so I look forward to doing that and getting on an airplane and being there to actually make sure that those get implemented in a timely manner.
I look forward to that as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Senator Welch.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Delighted to be here. Mr. Lindberg, really enjoyed our visit in the office, and of course quite proud of you and your family connection to Vermont, in Norwich, Vermont, where I live. So welcome. Second, I want to acknowledge your experience is really quite perfect for the job for which you're being considered. So I want to acknowledge my respect for the work you've done and what you bring to this. But third, and this is where it gets really tough for me, my view on these tariffs is that they're catastrophic for the farmers. And that's based on roundtable discussions I've had with many Vermont farmers. We import a lot of our fertilizer from Canada, in many cases our grain. And the dilemma I have is the dilemma you'll face. You can be the best negotiator possible, but if there are administration policies that make an uphill climb, an up mountain climb, how are you going to deal with that? You have no control over the tariff policies, but those are hammering our farmers in Vermont right now, and I suspect all across the country. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, thank you, Senator, and appreciate again our time together. I believe that President Trump has demonstrated an ability to sign and execute new trade agreements. For his first term, he signed significant bipartisan trade agreements, including USMCA, and 50 total agreements that supported over 1 million jobs. And so my faith is in the fact that we are going to get better deals for farmers, and that's what he's tasked me to do. And I think through those deals, there will be a boon to our farming economy.
All right. I understand you don't have any say or influence over the tariff policy. You just have to deal with the hand you're given. But I do, as I expressed to you privately, say publicly, I think these tariffs are going to make your job much more difficult and the day-to-day economics of our farmers much more difficult. Second, the USDA, Vermont farmers love it. It really has a great reputation. It's a lean and mean machine, and we're seeing cuts in the number of staff, and I object to that, and they don't seem to have any rhyme or reason. But the foreign assistance folks are also getting cut. So how are you going to contend with doing a very demanding job, a very important job, with these significant staff cuts that appear to be taking place within USDA?
Yes, so Senator, since I have not been in the building yet, I can't comment on administration policy related to staff plans, and I've not seen anything public about cuts at this time to the Foreign Agricultural Service or the organizations I'll oversee in this capacity. What I will say is that my experience working with the Foreign Agricultural Service staff and the Codex staff in my past capacities is that they do provide a very valuable service and have done, generally speaking, a very excellent job globally to represent our farmers and ranchers, and I look forward to working with them in this capacity.
Well, you're going to, you have a very hard job, assuming you're confirmed for it, and it appears that some of these forces are going to make it more difficult, but I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Mr. Westhill, equal opportunity, you're totally committed to it. You're an incredible example of what can be done where you work hard and overcome whatever obstacles face you. But also, obviously, you have some sensitivity that the deck is stacked in some ways much more significantly for some people than others, correct?
Senator, certainly people are disadvantaged. There's no doubt about that.
Right, and there's a real administration opposition to DEI, and from a distance, it appears oftentimes that means if the white person didn't get the job, there's suspect about whether there's been preferential treatment. That's been an action that's been taken by the administration. What's your observation about the administration action so far about DEI on university campuses, going after law firms, going after private entities that really, in my view, shouldn't be subject to the willful action of the executive?
Senator, thank you very much for the question. I'm not familiar with the specific example that you cited in terms of the white person getting the job.
Skadden Arps, Paul Weiss. I mean, these are law firms where the administration is saying that they don't like their hiring practices.
Sir, what I've noticed from the outside, what I've observed is that the president has put together what I think is a very bold agenda for civil rights advancement. Anything that goes against the advancement of civil rights as it exists in the law will not be tolerated. The executive orders, for example, that I've read, once again, not seeing what the implementation is like inside the administration yet. If I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed, I will be able to evaluate that. But it looks to me like anything that is discriminatory, the president has said that is going to be prohibited. And that is exactly what civil rights laws are meant to do.
Okay, thank you very much. I yield back.
Senator Hove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to welcome both of you. And Mr. Lindberg, I understand you have ties based on the esteemed senator from Vermont making references to your ties in the New England area of the country. But really now we consider you a Dakotan. And so we're very pleased not only to see you here and your wonderful family, and I want to welcome all of your family, and also the governor and First Lady. Thank you for being here. Great to see all of you, and Mr. Westhill as well, your family. Great to see them here as well. My first question is for you, Mr. Lindberg. Undoubtedly, you are a South Dakota State Jackrabbits fan, and of course, that's a very big rival to the North Dakota State Bison. And so if you are confirmed for this position, are you going to be able to set that rivalry aside and be fair to the North Dakota farmers and ranchers, as well as all of our other great ranchers and farmers across this country?
I will.
Very good. All right. The other questions are going to be easier, no doubt about it.
Go Yotes.
Oh, really? The Coyotes. Wow.
All my Jacks fans at home, go Jacks, but go Yotes.
All right, I got you. Well, we've got a great school, too, at both the university and North Dakota State. And we're great rivals. And, of course, if the South Dakota teams win, I always root for them as they go on to the national playoffs. Okay, first question is the CCC, Commodity Credit Corporation, is an incredibly important tool that we need and we use for our farmers and ranchers in a lot of different instances, one of which was the MFP back during the first Trump administration when we were taking on China in regard to tariffs and other trade issues. Do you feel it's an important tool, and that we continue to keep it as an important tool for agriculture?
I do.
Okay. The next one is sugar program is a huge industry in our state. Our ranking member just left, but also Senator Smith is on this committee. That's probably north of $3 billion industry, family-based farms in North Dakota, Minnesota, probably not as much in South Dakota. incredibly important businesses and ag sector for our state. The sugar program is incredibly important, and it goes directly, it's absolutely aligned with what President Trump's trying to do and make sure that we don't have unfair trade practices, we don't have dumping into this country that wipe out our domestic industry. So do you support the sugar program and that it's enforced strictly?
I do.
Okay. As far as trade, and you may have said some of these in your opening remarks, I apologize, I wasn't able to be here. Your sense of how we work through, we all want a level playing field, right? We share the goals and objectives of the Trump administration in terms of getting better terms for our producers, for our exporters, as well as helping our economy here at home. Talk about how you're going to help us work through the short-term disruption to get to the long-term goals that we all share.
Yes, thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. And what I believe is that, as Secretary Bessent mentioned this morning, there are trade deals on the horizon in the short run here. And that we will see new market access generated through President Trump's negotiations. And I look forward to the boon that will come to our family farms when we get those trade deals signed in the not-too-distant future. The president has also made very clear through a post he put out on social media that he will have the farmers and ranchers' backs should there be a need for that at that time. I believe that will not be necessary at this moment, but certainly I will follow the president's direction that should that be needed in the future, we'll be there to support them.
Okay. And have you had substantial dialogue with the USTR already and talked to Jameson Greer about, how you can work to effectuate better terms for our producers?
So I don't think that'd be appropriate for me at this stage to have those substantive discussions. Ambassador Greer and I served as chief of staff. He was at USTR and I was at XM. In the first Trump administration, we built a relationship through that. And so I look forward to having regular communications with Ambassador Greer and his team. Yeah.
He's a very impressive guy. His approach is spot on. He absolutely solid. He's got a great staff. And so I think working together, you guys are going to be a great duo. My final question is in regard to the Farm Bill. In the opinion of myself and I think others on this committee, we have to have affordable crop insurance and we have to update ARC PLC reference prices and have a viable countercyclical safety net. Though I know you're going to be discussing trade agreements along with MAP and the FMD program, do you share agreement with that approach on behalf of our farmers and ranchers?
I certainly would love to utilize the MAP and FMD program to open up vast new market opportunities for our farmers and ranchers.
All right. And out of respect for my time, Mr. Westhill, I'll save my questions.
Senator Slotkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to both of you. I want to pick up on something that Senator Hoeven was talking about, and that is acknowledging that there's real short-term pain that will be directed at our farmers due to the tariff policy. And I think what is happening now is we're saying the quiet part out loud. You're repeating what President Trump said and what Secretary Rollins alluded to, which is we will help pay for farmers to get them through this short-term pain. And just to review the bidding, as someone who lives on our family soybean farm, it's now grows soybean and corn, under the first Trump administration, the president did what seemed, I think, like a normal activity. He put 15% tariffs on Chinese goods, a bunch of Chinese batteries, pork, a bunch of things. That we can control. It's the retaliation we can't control. China retaliated. They put huge retaliatory tariffs, particularly aimed at soybean farmers. We had $27 billion of agricultural losses, and our soybean farmers lost 15% market share. We never got it back. China buys their soybeans from Brazil and from Argentina. We never got it back. And how did the Trump administration cover down on those losses? Because the farmers, as you can imagine, were losing their minds. We paid them with taxpayer dollars paid for by this committee to the tune of $23 billion in what people would call government checks, welfare checks. And farmers hate taking welfare. They just want to compete. So I don't think there's a question on the desire, particularly against China, to go after them and their unfair trading practices. It's that we can't control where the trade war goes. So can you acknowledge that that is the accurate description of what happened on soybean farmers in the last administration from that trade war?
Senator, thank you for the question, and I appreciate the fact that you're a family farmer, and that's wonderful. Thank you for giving me a chance to comment on it. If you look at the trade data from our phase one trade negotiations with China in the first Trump administration, the agricultural exports, when tariffs were implemented by President Trump, did have a drop in the subsequent year after the tariffs were implemented. If you look at the trade data the year after the China phase one deal was signed between the U.S. and China, agricultural exports went up to 39% higher than pre-tariff levels. So before the tariff started, after the tariffs went into place, we saw a dip. We saw market facilitation payments happen. And then after the year after that occurred, a 39% increase on what was pre-tariff levels for agricultural exports to China. And
Then why were we cutting checks to farmers from this committee? Literally, taxpayer dollars, so not something to sneeze at. Why were we having to subsidize our farmers who just wanted to compete in this field? Honestly, like the stats sound great, and I would be thrilled, right? No one. I'm a CIA officer. No one wants to push back on China more than me. But the truth is, we paid from this committee checks to farmers to get them through, and then completely lost that market share. So I think we need to acknowledge, I had a big farm kind of town hall in Frankenmuth, Michigan on Friday. And these are folks who are not Democrats, that's for sure. And they are stressed out about the potential retaliation. And you combine that with the immigration issues, right? They have legal vetted immigrants who are not showing up to work because they're scared. Our farmers have just a high level of uncertainty right now. And I just ask you to, again, we don't want to subsidize with basically welfare checks our farmers because of trade policy. And please, please stand in the breach on that. Other topic I want to add to the chorus on the unfair trade practices that lots of countries use with us. And I want to put on your radar that I want you to go into battle with the country of Turkey on tart cherries. We would love you to do blueberries, asparagus, potatoes, go to battle, go launch. And I want to know what you will specifically do, particularly for the specialty crop folks on this end of the dais, to make sure that even some of the smaller countries that we do trade with are going to get some hammers.
Yeah, I believe in an all of the above trade approach. The America First trade agenda, I believe, calls for that. We need to do big deals, little deals, medium deals, and all kinds of deals to make sure that we get that market access. So not only will I, again, be working with my interagency colleagues to make sure that we're advocating for our farmers and ranchers in these trade discussions we're having today, but the Foreign Agricultural Service does an excellent job of maintaining a list of non-tariff barriers that our farmers are facing around the world. And I will absolutely address those every time I get the chance overseas to meet with my counterparts in other countries and break those down.
Great. Please go to Turkey. Thank you. I yield back.
Senator Tuberville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. 5-alarm fire, we're in trouble. The Ag Department and us, we have a big chore in front of us. We're losing farmers every day. We lost 150,000 farms in the last 4 years. Our trade deficit is god-awful. It's not acceptable. The Biden administration sat on their hands for 4 years, didn't do one trade deal, and it looked like they tried to put our farmers out of business on purpose. My God, I couldn't believe it. Sitting there watching it. We have got to do something. I get calls every week. We're going out of business, worst the farmers have ever been. We can't do business as usual. Something has got to be done. And if we don't do that, we're going to lose them. It's going to be over. And we're going to be buying every bit of the food that we eat out of this country. And we saw what happened during COVID. It was a disaster when we couldn't get drugs because China's the only one to make drugs. So I'll get off my soapbox here and thank both of you for what you're going to try to do. Mr. Lindberg, cotton has weakened due to the surge of low-value textile imports of synthetic fibers, all from Southeast Asia. And they come through $800 de minimis loophole, and it's killing us. So President Trump's been working to close this loophole. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Senator, thank you. I can, and I appreciate you spending some time with me in your office to discuss these issues prior to this. Enjoyed our conversation. Absolutely, President Trump has taken seriously, based on the news reports I've seen, the de minimis exemption, which has been a tragedy for not only our cotton farmers, but also for manufacturers and a lot of other industries across America. I will absolutely work alongside and look forward to working alongside our interagency colleagues to make sure that those de minimis exemptions and things are held accountable and are following the law of the land. Our former governor is now at the Department of Homeland Security and looking to work with her team at Customs and Border Protection as well, as one agency I hadn't mentioned yet. Thank you.
Well, you know, it sounds like a little thing, but all those little things add up.
They do.
To our farmers. And, you know, we have got to get better commodity prices. If we don't, I mean, it's going to be over with for United States farmers. Mr. Westhill, how do you plan to approach and manage the USDA career staffers in the civil rights departments that do not support President Trump's agenda?
Senator, I really appreciate the question. And I'll say, look, I think the career staffers that I worked with in the first term were many of them consummate professionals. In fact, one of them's here today supporting my nomination as one of my guests. He served as the chief of staff the entire time that I served in the first term. I think the important thing to do is to, to put out a clear vision for what your plan is. I think the vast majority of the individuals who are in that office want to actually enforce civil rights. That's why they went into that office. And at the end of the day, it is a civil rights office, not a DEI office. And I think that the vast majority of those individuals will get behind President Trump's agenda, which is to advance civil rights.
Team USA. I mean, the only way we can make it. And we can't do it by pulling each other apart. Mr. Lindberg, the Biden administration put U.S. cattle producers at a competitive disadvantage and endangered the American public by allowing imports of beef from Paraguay. This is ridiculous. Paraguay cattle producers do not have the same food safety standards as the U.S. Can you speak to USDA's plans to ensure sufficient due diligence is done in these inspections?
Sir, thank you for the question. For me, in my role at USDA as the Undersecretary for Foreign Agricultural Affairs and Trade, that will be an effort by my colleagues, but I look forward to working with my colleagues and making sure that they have timely market analysis and market intelligence on those exact issues.
Thank you. Also, our peanut growers in my state, which is huge, and across the country, have been at a competitive disadvantage in the marketplace due to non-tariff trade barriers on peanuts from aflatoxin in the European Union. I asked Mr. Vaden this when he came through a few weeks ago, and I'll ask you too. Would you commit to ensuring USDA and USTR work together on Trump's agenda to reduce trade barriers and prioritize market access for all of our farmers?
I look forward to doing exactly that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate this hearing. I want to just start actually by making a couple of comments about nutrition programs and food programs, SNAP and WIC, and school meals, and especially food banks, because I know we're awaiting to see what the Republican budgets will look like coming out of the House, and I'm quite concerned about what I'm hearing about this. So I just want to draw my colleagues' attention to a couple of things I had an opportunity to do in Minnesota last week, which is to visit food shelves in Fairmont, Minnesota, Heaven's Table, and also Pequot Lakes, Minnesota, the Lakes Area Food Shelf. And these are places where the community really comes together to make sure that people can put food on the table. And what we, of course, see when we go to see these food banks are working families, seniors, often people who are working but their incomes are not high enough to be able to afford groceries all month long, people living with disabilities. These are the folks that are relying on these food banks. And we have seen, interestingly, in Minnesota, and I bet, colleagues, it's the same around the country, since January, food shelves have seen a significant increase in new families, often people coming through the door for the very first time. And of course, this is a problem in all different kinds of communities, colleagues, but it's particularly a problem in rural communities. In this country, 9 out of 10 counties with the highest food insecurity rates are rural. In Minnesota, the counties that are seeing the biggest increase in visits to food shelves are also rural. For example, Nobles County, my colleagues from South Dakota will recognize Nobles County, as will Senator Klobuchar, in the far southwestern corner of Minnesota, has seen an increase in food shelf visits of nearly 195% over the last year. So I draw attention to this, colleagues, because right now what's happening is USDA is cutting the funds that is helping food shelves meet their needs. The Emergency Food Assistance Program has been frozen and cut, and this has had a dire impact on the ability of food shelves in Minnesota and around the country to help people. I really want to put a point on this as we think about the big issues before us in the upcoming budgets and the reconciliation budget in particular. Now, Mr. Lindberg, thank you for being here. Mr. Westhill, thank you for being here. Mr. Lindberg, I want to use the time I have left to ask you about what we can do to create and preserve export markets. I really appreciated my colleague, Senator Klobuchar's opening statements about how Minnesota farmers and producers are kind of whipsawed, really struggling with a lot of the chaos around trade and tariffs. And there's no doubt in Minnesota farm country that the first Trump administration, Minnesotans were hit hard with these retaliatory tariffs. And in fact, in many places, farmers have yet to recover the lost market share that has, from what happened in those years. And I appreciated in your testimony, you said that you were ready to work with your counterparts across the administration to explore new markets. And I want to understand what that might look like. So here's an example. I have been strongly supportive of reopening the Colombian market to American poultry products, including turkeys produced in Minnesota. We're the #1 turkey producer. And this was a long and arduous process to get these agreements, these new agreements put into place. And then, of course, President Trump comes in. He announces a 25% tariff on Colombia, and then he pulls that back. And then this month, it was maybe all items from Colombia would receive a 10% tariff. So this is the environment that we come into as we try to figure out how to go forward. So my question for you is, how will you plan to work? How will you go about this as you're trying to build relationships and new potential trading partners, while at the same time existing trade agreements are getting torn up, sometimes over issues that have nothing related to trade itself? Like, how do you do the hard work of making agreements in that kind of environment?
Thank you, Senator, for the opportunity to comment on that. Certainly, I appreciate what's going on in southwestern Minnesota. I can see that corner of your state from my house, actually, not far down the road.
Right.
So my objective is absolutely to work with the interagency partners that I will engage with across the Treasury, Commerce, USTR functions. I think the Foreign Agricultural Service plays a vital role in those discussions. We have market intelligence that we provide back to feed into those discussions, and I would look forward to providing that. But again, I think one of the strengths I bring to the table for this role specifically, not only have I worked with Secretary Rollins at the America First Policy Institute for the last 3 years, I've also engaged with many of my counterparts who are already confirmed for senior level roles at those other organizations and agencies that I'll be working with. And so to me, it is a bringing together of like-minded folks to make sure that our farmers and ranchers' opinions are well represented at those tables.
Well, thank you for that. I know I'm out of time, Mr. Chair. I think I just want to make a point that it is difficult to reach agreements when there's so much inconsistency in the policy, and those agreements are reached because there's a sense of trust and a sense of continuity in whether those agreements are going to be abided by or not. And I think that makes it particularly difficult for anybody to try to reach new trade deals in this environment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member. I guess if I could just talk to all of you, I would say to Mr. Lindberg, to Mr. Westhill, to your families, thank you so much for being here in every way. And Governor, it's a real honor to have you, because you've come a long ways, and you've come a long ways in support. All of you that are sitting out here are basically wondering, well, really, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? These two individuals, I mean, it couldn't be more diverse if you really think about it, from civil rights to trade. It's a long, long ways apart, isn't it? But really, when it really boils down to it, you are Team Ag today. And Coach Tuberville, you know, is a great friend and a great coach. And I've been a coach a long time too. And I can tell you that without any doubt, it is all about team. Now, the bottom line of the whole thing is just this and just this alone. You know, today, especially in our fields today, you know, farmers are out there, they're busting their butt, the most productive engine in all the land could ever be, and they're worried. They're worried to death because from the standpoint of our trade deals, I mean, we would all be just frivolous if we were to sit back and say, yeah, it's going pretty good. Well, it's not going pretty good. That's all there is to it. With all in me, I would just tell all of us on both sides of the aisle, all of us on now Team Ag, without any question, we got to do something. You got to do something right now. And really, if you're coming to the table and it's going to be just beating a day and the same old, and absolutely able to say, you know, I'm an undersecretary or I'm a, you know, whatever it may be, and really what you have in your fingertips is just this. We're losing this battle. Our farmers and our ranchers are in real trouble. Real trouble. You see, my family has a family farm, and we grew it to a great big farm. But with all that being said, I know what's going on. I really do know. And I can positively tell you that our farm families, our ranch families are hurting. And they're really worried because absolutely with all that in them, they see their products and they see we've got to absolutely market our products. We do have to have our commodity prices higher, or we've got to have our input costs go way, way, way down. Now, with all that being said, I've got just a couple of really quick questions. And the question that I have more than anything is just this. You know, to you, Mr. Lindberg, you know, can you speak to what the first steps you might take to help President Trump's trade agenda to ensure that farmers and ranchers as well are not caught in the middle of the crossfire while he fights to some way, somehow, even out trade? I mean, everybody is so hung up on, you know, are the tariffs good or the tariffs bad and everything. He is trying to right America to where we are absolutely building something in America and absolutely right trade to where other countries are not taking advantage of us all the time. Please answer.
Senator, thank you for the question and for our time together before this. So we spoke, and I look forward to working with you in exactly solving this problem. From my perspective, President Trump has already begun the process of righting this wrong and righting this ship. You said you were a coach previously. I believe you can't win the game unless you have a strategy to win the game. And the way in which I think we win this game is by inviting our farm groups in, as I mentioned to the chairman's initial question to me, and figuring out what are those markets where we're deficient? What are those opportunities where we can get more sales? What are the exact commodities and what are the dollar values we can expect if we have a game plan in place? And then it's our job to go knock those trade barriers down and get those market access opportunities. And then it's the business's responsibility, the farmers, the associations, all the groups that support our folks to get out there and win the day alongside us. And so for me, it's taking a strategic and very targeted approach, getting a game plan together, and then executing on it. And I commit to doing that with you.
The only other thing I have is, Mr. Westhill, you know, I've got a great question here and everything. I'm out of time, but I can tell you just this, I congratulate your son on his athletics. The only thing that we have to differ with and everything is you went to the University of North Carolina, and my daughter played basketball for Clemson for a little while. So other than that, we're in great shape. And the only thing I would add is just this. Everybody here should know, and I think I'm correct about this, years and years ago, they said to our farmers, what is the value in a box of cornflakes if corn were $3 a bushel? What's the value of the corn in that box? I think it was a third of a penny. Our farmers and ranchers need us, and they need us all right now. We shouldn't forget that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Senator Schiff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lindberg, as you know, I come from California, and we are very much in the specialty crop business, really proud of the whole agricultural industry in California and to be the #1 agriculture producing state, as I remind my colleagues. We traditionally, by virtue of having such a heavy concentration of specialty crops, haven't participated as much in the work of the USDA in the sense of being a recipient of support from the department. But there are a number of programs that are hugely important to us: the Market Access Program, the Technical Assistance for Specialty Crop Program, the Regional Agricultural Promotional Program, and the Assisting Specialty Crop Exports. I'd like to get your thoughts on those programs, whether you see their value, whether we can count on you to be a champion for those efforts.
Senator, thank you for the question. And my wife's uncle is actually a fruit farmer in the great state of California, longtime specialty crop producer there. I've spoken with him many times about the importance of these exact programs with respect to helping create those markets for our specialty crops overseas. And I absolutely commit to working with our export promotion programs to make sure our fruit farmers and other specialty crop producers have those chances to export their products.
I would say also that a lot of the research that's done by USDA helps the specialty crop farms in dealing with different pests, diseases, et cetera, that really threaten the livelihood of what they produce. And the layoff of some of these important personnel is of grave concern. So we would also ask you to push back against the firing of these important scientists and researchers who are doing work that can literally save us billions in agricultural output. Mr. Westhill, I wanted to ask you about the USDA's history and the present. And in terms of the history, obviously the department has an incredible history, very important institution in our society going back to the days of Lincoln. But yet it also has a record of some pervasive discrimination. What is your commitment to making sure that the USDA serves a diverse group of farmers? In California, we not only have an extraordinarily diverse set of crops, we have an extraordinarily diverse set of farmers. And I want to make sure that farm programs are accessible to all the farmers, and not only is there no discrimination, but there are affirmative efforts made to make sure that farmers are aware of these programs and that that there is the outreach so that all can participate. And I'd like to get your thoughts on combating the historic discrimination within the department and also making sure that we're reaching a diverse group of farmers in the country.
Senator, thank you for the question. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your interest in civil rights at USDA and its history. There's a long history of discrimination at USDA. I've read the book on it. I've talked to your colleagues about those issues. I didn't see those issues when I served in the role as Deputy Assistant Secretary in the first term. But to the extent that they exist at all today, that there are barriers to accessing USDA programs or participating as a rancher or a farmer, no matter what you're producing, with USDA programs, we want to make sure that those barriers are knocked down. I'm committed to that. I'm committed to making sure that everyone can do business with USDA on equal footing, no matter their race or any other protected characteristic under civil rights law.
Thank you. And Mr. Lindberg, I don't know whether this is going to become necessary. I guess it depends on how long the tariff fight goes on. Farmers in California, like I think around the country, would much rather farm and trade and sell than be reliant on government support. But if there is a fund established to help farmers that are injured by retaliatory or other tariffs, in the past, specialty crop farmers have really not participated very much, and those in California even less. What can you do to make sure that there are resources available to help make those farmers whole, even as there has traditionally been much more attention on the commodity growers?
Senator, I believe that there were going to be a number of new trade deals signed in the not-too-distant future, that those programs will not be necessary. But should they become necessary, I will absolutely commit to making sure that the specialty crop producers in our country are represented and have the chance to apply, just like any other farm commodity groups.
And that may require some adjustment of how those programs operate, since the trees have a much longer life, a much higher investment, and many of the farmers don't have the same long history of farming the same crops. So there are some artificial barriers, I think, to participation, and would like to work with you to overcome them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you both for putting yourselves forward to serve this country. I appreciate that. Mr. Lindberg, it's good to see you. And I appreciated our conversation about how trade is critical to the ag economy in my state of Nebraska. The Biden administration left us with a $49 billion agricultural trade deficit. I know you and Secretary Rollins want to tackle this problem head on. I'm excited to see that Secretary Rollins announced she will be visiting 6 international markets in her first 6 months on the job. Nebraska's ag producers have talked to me about the opportunities in a number of these markets, such as getting fair treatment for our pork in Vietnam, securing access for our biofuels in India and Brazil, and our beef in the UK. I know Nebraska's ag producers are excited about the opportunity and focus on opening markets for our ag products. A couple of weeks ago, I met with Nebraska's pork producers and discussed what opportunities for export market development they are hoping for from the Trump administration. And they shared excitement about Vietnam in particular. Other competitors, such as the European Union, Russia, and Canada, already have trade agreements in place with Vietnam that give them lower tariff rates. With Secretary Rollins planning to visit Vietnam, it sounds like there's a real opportunity to ensure that we can compete fairly in that market. As the Secretary and yourself, if you are confirmed, work to open markets in new countries, how would you plan to get input and feedback from our farmers and ranchers about where they see opportunity or where they have challenges with exporting to other countries?
Thank you, Senator. I also enjoyed our conversation and just want to make mention, a friend of mine is here today who owns a farm in Nebraska. Bonnie Glick is with us today. So welcome to Bonnie, and glad to have her as a Nebraska farmer here. Yes, absolutely. So the process by which I started my career in consulting, so I think about things in a very straightforward and strategic manner. I plan to go into my office on day one, should I be confirmed for this role, and put the number -49 billion on the whiteboard, and begin inviting your Nebraska pork producers, all of the different commodity groups from around the country to come in and have conversations with us. This is a conversation that drives the outcome. I don't pretend to know all of the things. The actual USTR comment window that was recently opened on unfair trade practices was exceedingly helpful, and many groups began this process for us. But I say we have to get to the $60 billion sales number so that we get back into surplus, because America's always fed the world, and right now we're not meeting our mandate there, and we could be doing better. So it'll be a very iterative and consultative process through the program here.
I guess, can you talk a little bit about how you would coordinate with organizations that receive trade promotion funding through the USDA?
Absolutely, I can. So in my current capacity as CEO of South Dakota Trade, our state's international trade office, We've worked extensively with Food Export Midwest, which receives USDA Foreign Agricultural Service funding to help promote our agricultural products overseas. We have co-worked on trade missions together in the past. I've engaged their staff in sending them referrals from South Dakota to help promote products overseas as well. And so it would be very much my pleasure, and I think a continuation of the work I've already been doing to engage exactly in what you're referring in that question.
You know, I know that our farmers and ranchers are excited about the prospect of opening up new markets. And, you know, when we look at the retaliatory tariffs that are out there, that makes people nervous. But our farmers and ranchers are also willing to give the president time on this to be able to expand those markets. We look at China and what they're doing. They happen to be a significant market for soybeans, a major crop that we have in Nebraska. But we're facing a duty there from the Chinese of 155%. That shuts our farmers out of that market. Can you talk a little bit about your goals when you look at China and what maybe you would see them doing to meet some of the needs that we have in this country, how we can come together, what you would tell a soybean farmer in Nebraska who's feeling anxious about those tariffs? What would you say?
Sure. So one thing I might mention, this morning, Secretary Bessent spoke at the White House, and the quote I really enjoyed that he said was, "The aperture of uncertainty is narrowing." And if you look at I mentioned earlier in this hearing, the data point that after we signed the China Phase 1 agreement in the last Trump administration, we actually saw a net increase in exports to China on the agricultural front, up 39% from pre-tariff levels. So we know that trade deals work. We're going to get, hopefully, trade deals done early in the process, and that's going to increase those export opportunities readily in the not-too-distant future. And so I look forward to working with you and all of your producers to make sure that we can get that message across and that we're going to be here as a lifeline for them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
The senator from Georgia, Senator Warnock.
Thank you, Chair Boozman. Congratulations to both of you for your nominations and welcome to your families. Over the last few months, President Trump has thrown the global economy and agricultural markets into a tailspin with uncertainty caused by his sweeping and chaotic tariffs. I don't share the Secretary of Treasury's positive view where things are at this point. The president's actions have created uncertainty, and we see it on the ground. We see it with Georgia farmers who are worried about affording necessary inputs like fertilizer and losing access to critical export markets. Mr. Lindberg, if confirmed, you would be responsible for international agriculture trade at USDA, and I remain concerned that the president's manufactured trade war will hurt Georgia farmers, who I'm hearing from regularly. And I'm concerned that it will push our allies in exactly the wrong direction, actually towards China. Do you share that concern?
Senator, thank you for the question. And as a point of reference, I've been a longtime acquaintance of former Georgia Agricultural Secretary Gary Black, and we've discussed trade issues and actually have worked together in the past. He's spoken at a summit I've hosted in South Dakota for several years. And so the short answer is I believe that Georgia's pecan growers face unfair tariff barriers around the world and non-tariff barriers on their products. I also believe that Georgia's shrimping industry is getting decimated unfairly by foreign imports that are produced in unsanitary conditions. And it's time that we take a stand and we provide better market access that gives your producers what they deserve, what they've been promised in many cases around the world, but also protect our domestic producers as well.
Are you concerned that these tariffs are pushing them towards China?
I believe that
allies.
I believe that the president is going to sign a number of new trade agreements that will open up market access
So-
for our producers.
So I've done a lot of work on this issue. I'm well aware of the concerns that Georgia farmers have had with getting their products, pecans and other products. I've dealt with the aflatoxin issue with respect to peanuts in foreign markets. The tariffs is still another issue. We've seen this movie before, and when it happened during the first Trump administration, they were basically subsidized. And as I talk to Georgia farmers, I would submit to you that they want trade, they don't want aid. If confirmed, what will you do to combat this isolationist strategy and open new export markets for Georgia farmers? We agree that we want to open export markets.
Absolutely, we do, yes. And I believe that the trade agreements that were signed in the first Trump administration are examples that we can live by. The USMCA, which was a bipartisan agreement, provided new market access. We could replicate agreements like that successfully to increase those market access opportunities around the world for Georgia producers.
I'm certainly concerned about the outcome of these practices. I haven't seen much so far that heartens me, but I look forward to working with you in the future to do everything we can to open international trade markets for Georgia farmers. I've spoken many times in this committee about USDA's terrible and well-documented record of discrimination against black farmers and the importance of federal programs aimed at addressing past discrimination and uplifting underserved farmers. I'm proud of my and Senator Booker's efforts in the previous administration to push USDA to break down the structural and financial barriers erected by the agency that many underserved farmers face, but the work is not over. Mr. Westhill, good to meet you the other day in my office. If confirmed, you would be over civil rights at USDA. Do you agree that USDA has historically engaged in discriminatory actions that have uniquely harmed black farmers in their farm lending programs?
Senator, thank you for the question, and it was a pleasure to meet with you in your office when we talked about this as well. And as I've suggested to your colleagues and to you then, I've read the book on that particular very sad and bad history at USDA.
It's a yes or no question.
That is a yes.
A yes, thank you. So you're aware of the Pickford case, and are you aware that USDA has agreed to a consent decree settlement, which a court has blessed in light of that history of discrimination?
Yes, Senator, I'm aware of Pickford.
Okay, and do you acknowledge that according to an NPR analysis of USDA data as recently as 2022, black farmers were still denied USDA loans at higher rates than any other race?
Senator, I'm not aware of that. I'm not aware of that.
I want you to become aware of it, and I'm going to submit this report. Chair Boozman, I'd like to submit it, this analysis for the record. If confirmed, how would you continue the important work to dismantle these structural barriers and rebuild trust between the USDA and farmers who previously faced discrimination?
Senator, I appreciate the question. I really do appreciate your strong interest in these types of issues. I think they're very, very important. It's one of the reasons why I've dedicated my career to working on them. What I can commit to is enforcing civil rights at USDA vigorously, the same thing that we did in the first term when I headed this office as Deputy Assistant Secretary. We would do it again. If there are artificial or arbitrary barriers that are preventing anyone from doing business with the USDA, customers, employees, or otherwise, we want to make sure that those are broken down, and I'm committed to that.
I'm also concerned about this administration's attack on programs that fall under the broad umbrella of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Following the President's DEI executive order, this administration haphazardly and illegally, in my view, froze funding passed by Congress on a bipartisan basis for many critical programs, causing chaos for the students and organizations who depend on those funds, including USDA's 1890 National Scholars Program. While I was glad to see that program unfrozen, it didn't happen until some folks made noise. There was a lot of a public outcry and the recognition that this shouldn't have happened in the first place. Mr. Westhill, do you believe that 1890 institutions like Georgia's Fort Valley State University are DEI?
Senator, no, I don't. I'm very proud of the work that I did in the first term to support the White House initiative on historically black colleges and universities, and I look forward to helping with that initiative again if I'm confirmed.
Glad to hear of your commitment to these institutions, recognition that they do critical work. And so if you're confirmed, will you commit to ensuring that USDA fully implements all 1890 programs as required by statute and intended by Congress?
Senator, anything that's in the law, I would make sure that if it's under my authority, that it would be enforced, absolutely.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thanks again to Mr. Lindberg and Mr. Westhill for appearing before the committee and to our committee members for their participation in today's important hearing. The record will remain open for 2 business days. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.